Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 28. Making the Dark Legion mad at us was not one of those things that was easier said than done. Yojimbo made very good use of Venetti's Mephisto sniper rifle to do cranial volume surveys on Razids, Centurions, and Necromutants. The vast majority of undead Legionnaires seemed deathly afraid of the Gehenna Puker's fire. I guess that was because cremation somehow put them beyond the possibility of being reanimated yet again. While being an undead warrior might not be much of a life, as the saying goes, it beats the alternative, even if only by a slender margin. Picking off the intelligent among the horde and terrifying the rest seemed to work pretty well for buying time until the point when the pressure of those below forced the ones above forward. At the base of the chapel tower, Ezeghouls exhorted their minions to assault us. Even though the Ezeghouls were too big to traverse the corridors to punish the Necromutants and Legionnaires, the lesser creatures took their threats to heart and gradually forced us back. When we reached the melee corridor, the four of us broke and ran. We vaulted over the bronze door that had been wedged crossways in the corridor. On the other side of it, various explosive charges had been arranged to convert the whole thing into a sleet storm of shrapnel. Nodding once as I visualized what that would do to the monsters following us, I cut around the corner and limped as quickly as I could to the helicopter. Two huge yellow evacuation tubes, one at each external corner of the helipad, ran all the way down to the ground. The civilians would have used them to slide to safety. The rest of us, because of our armor and weapons, would have shredded the tube's soft fabric and had to use the slide cables to go down. Harris linked himself to one, and Pam, Jan, and Yojimbo took the other three. Mitch Hunter and I would have to wait until they had cleared the lines before we could use them. But we both had last-minute work to do. Hunter looked up from the small LCD screen on the detonation control. "They're at 20 meters, Rex. Use the puker." He pointed at the center of the helipad where our four fallen comrades had been laid out. "We won't get them away now, so burn them. Don't want the Legion using them against us. 10 meters. I immolated the bodies, then started flooding the room in the temple with fire. "Down!" I hit the deck at Mitch's shout. A tremendous explosion shook the chapel, and the backblast blew fire into a roiling ball that ascended toward the heavens. Glass fragments from the windows pelted us, but broke like waves on stone against our armor. The two of us scrambled up and ran to the escape lines. "Lines 1 and 2 are clear," Pam told us over the radio. I used the Gehenna Puker to ignite the evacuation slides on lines 3 and 4. Taking a snap link from the escape provisions basket near line 2, I clipped my armor onto the line and slid to safety. Wind whistled past the angles in my armor as I accelerated. Then I hit hard and white-hot agony punched up through my left leg. Hunter picked up the puker from where it had fallen and torched the other two lines while Jan and Wendy dragged me back from the edge of the chapel tower. Fiery loops of rope twisted and snapped through the air as they fell to the ground. The evacuation slide sent a thick gray smoke into the sky, and the stench of burning plastic spiced the death miasma with a waxy scent. Hunter turned toward the front of the chapel and shot a gout of flame off toward the entrance. Around the corner galloped 3 Ezeghouls, each bearing a huge sword in one hand and a pistol-gripped assault rifle in the other. Mitch's attack forced them to shy off, but they cut in closer to the chapel and threaded their way through the burning rope snakes to face us. One of them gestured at us as I attempted to shake Jan and Wendy off. "Go!" I shouted, but my word trailed off into a terrified shriek. Something pulsed out from the Ezeghoul at the head of their wedge. I felt it in my soul, the way I could feel heat from a fire on my flesh, and this burned me with utter terror. I fell down as Wendy and Jan ran away screaming. I wanted to run with them, but the throbbing pain in my ankle told me that was not possible. I had no weapon left with which I could kill the Ezeghouls, so fighting them was not an option. I had to fight, but I could not. I had to run, but I could not. The alternatives ricocheted around inside my skull, colliding with each other and getting boosts in vitality from the fear gripping me, though a small part of me knew the numbing horror I felt was artificial and projected by the lead Ezeghoul, that logic could not command me to move or act. As terrified and as helpless as I had been when my spine had been shattered, now I was yet even more frightened and hopeless. Even Parabellum Rex, the part of me that fought so hard to stay alive, could not have defied or denied or defeated what I felt. I was going to die, and not a living thing could prevent it. The first sight I caught of my rescuer came when the sun sparked gold from his glittering armor, having leapt from the helipad. Ash landed with both feet square on the spine of the lead Ezeghoul, right in the middle of its back. I heard its spine snap as cleanly as mine had. Ash's weight bore the beast to the ground, shattering ribs and pulverizing internal organs. The creature's inhuman shriek of agony thundered through me and started my ears ringing. Ash bounced off the first Ezeghoul and rolled up in front of the one on the right. I noticed that Ash had lost his left arm. His left leg had been stripped of armor, and a number of frayed adductor cables hung down from his hip joint. His SSW 4200P had no ammo belt feeding into it, and the barrels had long since warped because of the heat generated by the gun's use. In fact, the barrels twisted down and had been wrapped around the hilt of a centurion's barbed sword. Ash thrust the makeshift bayonet into the second Ezeghoul's abdomen. Steaming green blood started to bubble around the wound, but the Ezeghoul did not cry out in pain. It glared defiantly down at Ash. Its expression seemed to ask if that was the best he could do. Then it raised its own sword and shouted contemptuous epithets at the Attila. Ash hit the switch on the gun, and the barrels began to spin. Lunging forward, Ash let the weapon drill into the Ezeghoul's belly. Viscera and blood, the color and consistency of cream spinach, poured out over Ash, but he ignored it and the Ezeghoul's flailing hooves. Pushing forward and down, Ash levered the sword up higher into the Ezeghoul's body cavity, then drove it up further until I saw the spinning blade shred the Ezeghoul's throat from the inside. The Ezeghoul Ash's jump had crippled went and flopped on its side in front of me. It dug its hand into the red earth and pulled itself closer to me. My sense of terror increased, but the sides of the equation that had made me incapable of action before became unbalanced. Unable to flee, I was forced to fight, and the monsters being forced down to my level meant I could strike at it. While I might not have the weapons I needed to kill it outright, I remember that Hunter had doomed one by destroying the pulsating breathing apparatus on its face. As it crawled nearer and I gathered my arms beneath me, the third Ezeghoul leaped over its crippled leader and attacked Ash with its sword. The Attila tried to pull its weapon free of the Ezeghoul corpse, but the whirling blade hung up on the breastbone. Unable to parry, yet unable to retreat, since its software commanded it to somehow defend me, Ash gave the Gatling cannon one final tug. The sword carved its way out of the corpse, but too late to help. The Ezeghoul's sweeping struck Ash's head off and sent it sailing out toward my retreating compatriots. Pushing off with my good leg, I leaped above the first Ezeghoul's clumsy attempt at grabbing me. Throwing myself forward, I landed on my right knee and hand inside the circle of the Ezeghoul's arms. I stabbed my right hand forward and punched it into the gelatinous parasite clinging over the Ezeghoul's snout. I felt the protoplasm quiver, and mucus gushed at the edges of the seal. Then I felt the Ezeghoul's teeth close on my forearm. Posting up on its arm and scrambling to get its front hooves under it, the Ezeghoul reared its torso back and pulled me from the ground. The breathing device poured down my arm and hung from my shoulder. The monster started to swing its head back and forth to shake me and snap my limbs. The unforgiving power in the creature's broken body convinced me that I could easily accomplish what I desired. As I started to swing back to my left, I kicked off the Ezegul's bony chest with my right foot, then accelerated my swing. Reaching up with my left hand, I grabbed one of the horny protuberances on its brow and swung myself around to where the body's weight wrenched my forearm sideways in the monster's beak and let me get my leg around its neck. The Ezegul shifted its weight to its left arm and tried to grab me with its right hand. As it did that, I hammered my left fist down on its snout and left eye. I heard something crack, and part of the beast's face caved in. Another punch completed the fracturing of its maxilla. I pulled my right arm free of its broken jaw just as its right hand grabbed my right thigh and hammered me into the ground. My armor absorbed most of the tooth-rattling impact. Kicking wildly, I dug my heel into its forearm and the hand released me. As I spun away from the Ezegul's hand, the terror that had seized me vanished, leaving me unarmed on one knee. Before a dying Ezegul, facing yet another that was uninjured. And the computer took that moment to inform me that, though I could not feel it yet, my collision with the ground had dislocated my right shoulder. The last Ezegul reared up and flicked a hoof at me. I managed to partially avoid the blow, which meant when it hit me in the chest and knocked the wind out of me, it only tossed me half a dozen feet further through the Martian air. I landed hard again on my right shoulder and heard a pop. I waited for the pain, but the computer reported my arm was back at its socket and suggested that arching my back would help me regain my breath. Almost prancing, the Ezegul charged at me, then stopped as if it had hit a stone wall. I saw sparks glint off some of the metallic bits of the Ezegul's body, and flesh peeled back in ribbons as bullets fragmented upon impact. Its head snapped back, and the Ezegul stumbled backward as gunfire caught it high, but the creature regained its balance just on the far side of its leader's corpse. And I knew it was far from dead. Using the gun in its left hand, it sprayed fire out at Mitch and the others shooting at it. Then it lowered its sword like a lance and pointed it directly at my chest. Fortunately for me, its retreat returned it to the spot where it had beheaded Ash, though it faced me instead of him. The headless Attila unit's proximity sensors registered its target, and the limbs, having stored the final command the head had given them, plunged its weapon's whirling blades into the Ezegul's body. The sword augured its way into and through the monster's chest. Then the Attila wrenched the blade upward and pulled it free in a verdant spray of blood and vertebra. The monster's dying scream sounded more out of frustration than any agony. Its forehooves shattered red rocks and peppered me with fragments as it sought to somehow stomp the life out of me. I scrambled back away from it, despite the agony in my left leg. Sparks struck as the creature's front end succumbed to the damage Ash's body had done to its back half. It crashed down in an ochre cloud and finally lay very still. Jan and Diane Parker, another of Mitch's snipers, ran up to me, hooked their arms through mine, and pulled me back away toward where the others had gathered. "We're gonna try to clear the place for Julia to land the sky ray." Mitch dropped to one knee beside me and scanned the skies for our plane. Ammo was low, but we might be able to hold it if she gets back soon. "No," I gasped weakly. "Let's move. Let's get up to the top of the plateau. High ground is good, but we won't have escape chute for the other side. Mitch, trust me. Let's work up the side of the mesa here." The man stopped for a second, then looked down at me. "Do you know something I don't?" "I think so. And we both better hope I really do." Titus and Scythia led the trek up the side of the mesa. The rough path there was usually 5 feet wide, but erosion in the rainy season had worn it down to a foot or less in some places. The sacred warriors helped the pilgrims along, with Lane and me in the middle, and the rest of our unit playing rear guard. We made progress slowly, and as the heat rose off the desert plains below, we stopped more frequently to rest the pilgrims. To the north and west, hundreds of distant black smoke plumes dotted the landscape. Black dots hovered in the air, then darted around. Other specks wove in and out among them, and occasionally something exploded. Always, though, the black dots pushed further north, relentlessly and remorselessly. Hunter sat down beside me and dropped his helmet between my helmet and Ash's head. Kinda ghoulish you're carrying that thing around. I know, but Ash is still in there, and he's working on our situation right now. I pointed out at the distant air battle. Would I be guessing wrong if I said it looked like Imperial's drive is heading in reverse? Nope, serves the bastards right, too. What do you mean? Pam, Lane, and I were with the Banshees when the Dark Legion first started to build over here. Capital launched a huge attack against the beginnings of their citadel. Alvarez can tell you about it. She told me about it on the flight here to Mars. Imperial's automatic air defense came online and knocked down about 80% of what we were sending in to attack the Dark Legion. They got a bunch of kills out of the attack and extended their control over a lot of the territory. But now the Dark Legion is encroaching on them. Had they not ambushed us, the Dark Legion would have never gotten its beachhead on Mars. Diane Parker cradled her sniper rifle on her chest as she squatted down next to me. Captain, I think we have trouble. The Legion guys from the chapel have stopped following us. I glanced down at the base of the plateau and saw she was correct. The Razids appeared to be assembling their troops away from the head of the trail we were on. In fact, they were moving them back from the base of the mesa. Had any of us had grenade left for our weapons, we might have been able to kill quite a few in those tightly packed formations. Parker pointed off at the far battle. I've been watching some of the choppers out there. I think we have some headed our way. Great, we'll be sitting ducks up here. Mitch stood up and started pointing both up and down along the trail. We have incoming aircraft. Disperse and find what cover you can. Parker, see what you can pick off. Yojimbo, do the same. He shook his head. This will be ugly. So if what you know that I don't know is a way to conjure up miracles, enlighten me. Ash's head beeped. I picked it up and stared him in the eyes. I got a command code sequence, and I immediately fed it to the software controlling my cellular phone link. As the program loaded and ran, I smiled at Mitch. Ask and you might receive. All of a sudden, a white curtain parted before my eyes, and I saw Carl dressed in casual slacks and shirt standing on the ledge beside Mitch. This is highly irregular, Rex. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I remember your saying this was your hideaway. I shut it down long ago, Rex. Carl shook his head. In fact, I contacted you only because the repeated attempts to contact me through Ash alerted me to the tampering. Had I not identified him, your efforts would have gone unanswered. Forgive me for ignoring protocols, but this is a highly dangerous situation we're in, and we're desperate. Carl nodded as he looked down at the growing black spots in the sky. So you are. The thing is, this is a hyper-secret installation. We shut it down after the Dark Legion arrived. The board would revolt if I used it to succor your band of survivors, the majority of whom are the Brotherhood. Even worse, Lorraine Colvin is not among them. Carl, if you don't help us... I started to protest that he had to help us, but letting us die would keep his secret. At some point in the future, whatever he had inside the mesa might be valuable and help stop the Dark Legion at a crucial point. To waste it on us might do more harm than good, and someone in Carl's position had to consider such things when making a decision. I frowned. I'm asking a favor, Carl. Saving us may not be cost-effective or even expedient, but it is the human thing to do. It is good, and injecting some more good into the world will hurt the Dark Legion in more ways than you know. Eloquently put, Rex. Carl nodded slowly. An excellent mix of abstract thought blended with emotion under the guise of logic. Then you'll help us? I will. He shrugged. Besides, I've wanted to play with the toys in here for a long time. Carl's image grew to titanic proportions as he stepped off the ledge and fell toward the ground. He strode away from us and sprang up to the height of 1 kilometer. As he did so, I felt a rumbling in the mountainside and heard someone say, "Damn, those look like missile launching bays." Carl bracketed the first Dark Legion helicopter with his hands, and a missile streaked skyward at it. Carl's hands continued to enfold the chopper as if it were a butterfly intent on fleeing, and the missile spiraled through the sky at it. When the missile hit, the helicopter exploded, but Carl walked through the fireball unharmed. In similar fashion, he directed other missiles at the 4 remaining choppers, then lobbed one in on the Dark Legion's ground forces. Their remnants scattered, screaming in complete panic. Our people started cheering, and Mitch banged his fist against my shoulder pad. But looking further up north, I saw something that drained all the relief and pleasure out of me. The far citadel grew brighter for a moment as a miniature sun ignited beneath a rocket ship. It rose from the horizon slowly at first, then quickly and finally hurtled to the sky like one of Carl's missiles. I watched it, and my computer continually updated its estimated range and velocity in ever-increasing numbers. I shivered. That's it, Mitch. That's a ship carrying Lorraine away. Taking her from Imperial on the moon broke their plan, but sending her back here fixed it up again. Where do you think it's going? I shook my head as I slowly stood up beside him. I don't know, and without that information, there's no way we'll ever get her back. Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 28, End.